Man wakes up to find himself lying in a pit. The lower half of his body had been covered with cement. Looking at the mixer running next to him, police officer Jack cries out for help. How he wished someone would come to his rescue, but no matter how much Jack cried out, the two mothers did not move. Instead, they pushed the mixer down, pouring a lot of cement on him. Jack was getting scared. He kept begging them to leave him alone, saying that his colleagues would be here soon, if they could leave him alone, that the day had never happened. As soon as the words were out of his mouth, the other policeman, Mark, did arrive, but the strange thing was, the building Mark came from, it wasn't the brightly lit building that Jack had seen earlier. It looked like an old mansion that had been abandoned for years. Mark made his intentions clear, but the caretaker told him there was no one in the building but himself, and that it would be demolished in 2 months. There was no way anyone would call the police. While Mark was in disbelief, Jack's side was buried in cement with only one head left. The mother and daughter were afraid he'd escape. The mother and daughter had put a slab down to keep it down. Jack couldn't figure out that he had never done anything wrong, and it was the first time he had met them. Why did they insist on harming him? Thinking about it, he seemed to understand something. When he had first entered the house, the girl wouldn't let him in for any reason, so they were protecting him. But what he regretted was that he hadn't understood anything at the time. The old woman saw Jack's helpless face. She gave him 2 options. One was to put a tube in his mouth when she covered his body with cement, and put a tube in his mouth. This would keep him alive for a while. The second was to cover him completely with cement, until the cement enters his lungs, suffocating him to death. When Jack heard this, he chose the former, because he felt that, if he lived a little longer, Mark would be able to come and save him. After choosing, the old woman put a tube in his mouth. Then she buried Jack in cement, completely encasing his head, leaving only one tube leaking out. Jack had the right idea. Mark was led by the caretaker. Mark was led quickly to room A on the 7th floor, but to his surprise, when he entered the room, it was empty. It was as if it hadn't been lived in for years. It was a completely different place from the 7th floor room A. It wasn't the same place at all. Mark thought something was going on. He took out his phone. He was about to dial Jack's number. But then, an even more bizarre scene occurred. The ringing was coming from underground. Mark fell to the ground in fear. That's when the caretaker reminded him, "Your partner must be down there. Call for help."